Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by, hanging out with us today as TLC presents Todd-versations. We are so excited to have you join us once more, and we are really thrilled to have our guest today. Please, everybody, give it up for the Chief Commercial Officer at Wholesum Family Farms, Ricardo Crisantes. Welcome, my friend. Welcome.
Thank you, Todd. Glad to be here. Glad to be part of the Todd-versations. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, man. I am so thrilled and excited to have you here. I think that your story is so worthy of conversation, and what you guys are doing, what your family's doing, your longevity, your history, the things that you're doing, your heart on your sleeve. You're an amazing person, and this is going to be a fun conversation. So I got 157,911 questions to ask you. So I'm going to shut up and start asking questions, if that's cool with you.
Let's knock them out.
All right. So that's what I'm talking about. All right. Share with me a little bit. Let's start at the beginning. Share with me with the history of your family and how this all kind of started.
Yeah, no, like many other, family farms history, it's a generational effort. So, our history begins with my grandfather. He, in the 20s and 30s moved from Greece to Mexico and started farming there tomatoes, and that was kind of the first generation, right?
Right.
In the 30s, shipping product from Mexico to the United States. The second generation, was my father. Him and his generation came in kind of in the 60s. My dad, he wanted to be a grower from day one. He studied agronomy, and and while in college, bumped into the Rachel Carson book and Silent Spring, and
Right.
just like, wow, what an idea. And it seems crazy, right? And how could that work? And like really, I grow in a valley that there's thousands of acres, and how could that idea even work? It wasn't until the 80s that he traveled to Spain, to Holland, where he saw the greenhouse technology, that he said, well, if I have a controlled environment, could that crazy idea of organics work there?
Right.
And so in the early 90s, he started his first trials of organics inside greenhouses. And my generation, my brothers and I, we came to the business in the mid to late 90s, and took up the ideas from our previous generation, and we
Right.
took the farm 100% organic.
Wow. So 1930s, and here we are in 2021. I don't know, is it 2021 or is it still 2020? Just like March is like 1000th day. I don't even know anymore. You guys got certified back in the early 90s, right?
Right.
So I mean, it literally was like getting a receipt for cash when you got certified back in those days. It was, it was like the system was not anywhere like it is today.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, here in our office, we have our first organic certificate hanging there, from 1991.
Wow.
Certified, and yeah. I mean, that it's been long when back in the day, USDA hadn't had the National Organic Program. It was we were kind of just following the California law on
Right.
food production system of 1990, right? So. Yeah, I mean, it was when my dad started it. It was kind of, I wouldn't say the beginning of the movement, but certainly, the movement was starting to kind of become more, an upward trend, and
Yeah.
really kind of building out what it meant to be, organic at the time. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it was post ALAR, so that was a big deal. And then you started getting a lot of people that, started paying more attention to it, and it started to grow. And you had some brands, some emerging brands out there that were starting to gain traction, like yourself, and opening up those runways. So yeah, you were definitely, I mean, you have ridden, a ride up for a very, very long time. And it's so great to see this trajectory of our industry. So tell me a little bit, what's it mean to be wholesome?
Right. So for me, as being part of a culture, we have company values here that, where do these values come from, right? Like they really kind of come from like looking back at our stories that we tell over and over again, right? And we have value called that we're problem solvers. Why?
Right.
Because we expect things to go wrong. Like as growers, my dad would always say, hey, expect problems or not, you're going to be disappointed, right?
Right.
And it's that mantra that we need to be able to, solve our problems. Like, a brother of mine, used to say, hey, look, nobody's going to come here and teach us how to do it. We got to figure out on our own. So let's just get to it. Let's put a trial on, cucumbers where we, do just one shoot, and let's do another one. We put 3 shoots and see which one works out better, right? Like, because nobody's going to come and teach us and tells us how to do it. We're going to develop our own knowledge. So these values kind of come out from our history and from our story, and now we recognize them and put them up to our 4 company values, which is, integrity, responsible growing, problem solvers, and people on the move, right? And these are the 4 values that we try to, live up to. They are aspirational, and we try to see these behaviors, and we, teach them to all of our employees. And that for us, it's what it means to be wholesome.
I love that. And I love the fact that you use the word culture and people multiple times in the sentence, because it's so important. Developing culture inside of a business, I think, is catalyst to get a brand to propel itself, right? If the people behind you don't love what it is that you are doing, that brand just needs CPR, it seems like, all the time. And I just love that about your business and what you guys do. You have a quote that you guys use saying that growing organic produce is more in a business, it's a lifestyle. What's that actually mean? And what's it mean really specifically? What's it mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, to me is that, like when you grow organically and you kind of live by this set of values, right? It really kind of starts, for us, it started to come together. Like it was like a domino that you start, knocking down, and then that leads you to other actions, and you kind of just follow that path, right? So for us, it's a lifestyle in the sense, like, I remember thinking back, in the late 90s that, we were such a cool, company. We were, growing organically. We were using compost. We felt like really sustainable and cutting edge, right? But then, the next thing it's like, well, what about the electricity that we're using? I guess we didn't think about that, right? Like, where does that come from? And how renewable is that? And, and what about the clamshell that we're using? And then all of a sudden you start kind of like one question leads you to another question, right? And your responsibility to your employees, to your community, to your customers, you kind of start seeing that, holistically. And to me, that's the kind of the lifestyle that we want to say, we're into. So it doesn't stop at the company gates. Like, we think about, our impact, our responsibility, beyond that.
Right. I love that. I love that. What's it mean? So taking that question a step further, what's it mean to the consumer?
So for me, it's like, Wholesum wants to be a company that expresses its value through what they grow, right? So, we want to grow with integrity. So we take organic integrity really seriously, right? Like, we don't just, say, oh, here's a certificate and let's go for it. Well, we want to kind of take that a step further, right? We actually send, people there to, follow the audits, follow the non-compliances, and really kind of feel that, the operation that we're going to represent, that we're going to put our name on it, it's living up to that organic integrity. So for us, it's really kind of, if we say we have integrity, our products have integrity, and I think our consumers recognize when that, is presented to them in the marketplace.
Well, you brought up a really interesting point, and something that I believe in wholeheartedly, and I think that you guys represent that to a T, is getting into the conversation about positive costs into food. And what does that mean? What does it mean to have integrity into your brand? What does it mean to do some of the things that you've done? To your point earlier, you brought up about being in a CEA environment. What is our energy use? Which is, of course, a big debate in the CEA space, right? And amongst all the other debates that they have, right? But it's just interesting to me, how you looked at that and said, hey, we've got to have integrity in that conversation as much as we have integrity in our people conversation. And I think that's extremely commendable. It really is. I know one of the areas that you guys are cutting edge, leading the way, have been banging this drum for a long time that I think is really quite inspirational. And one of the things that I really wanted to kind of get into with people, because I think it's a little bit unsung in a lot of ways. I don't think people necessarily, I think people understand what it is, but they may not necessarily know the depth of what it is and what's involved. And that's fair trade. You guys have been leading that charge. You have been in the forefront. You have been very proud of it. I've seen firsthand, my own eyes have seen firsthand what you've done. It's amazing to me. And again, it's one of those things that when I talk about positive costs of food, I believe that this is one of those benchmarks that we need to take a look at because of what it's doing. So for everybody out there that may or may not know, give us just a quick synopsis of what is fair trade by definition.
Yeah, I mean, in its most simple form, it is a certification system, but it is a system that is trying to bring equity to the supply chain. It's how most simply I can say it, right? And equity, is about, taking care of every participant in that supply chain. And how we do it is first through standards, right? We have standards about, worker safety. We have standards about, harassment, but we also have what differentiates this from other certifications is that we actually are trying to, sell a promise to consumers that the people that produce this cucumber, pepper, tomato, right, are going to be treated fairly in the dealings. And we are asking consumers to give a very small percentage of that sale back to the people that grew that awesome tomato that you're going to make a great and healthy meal with, back to their community so that everybody can develop together. I believe that, consumers will get a great quality product, and I think the farm workers will be able to develop their communities, and the farmers will be able to enjoy the sale of that produce.
Well, it's interesting. Again, it's integrity and positive cost of food, but it's also bringing a reality to the food supply system. So often we run to the grocery store to pick something up, and that is the extent of our effort into that process, right? It's like, I have to go get X, Y, Z. But now this is a moment of pause and back to, lifting up the bar, raising awareness. I think it's just fantastic. So let's get a little more specific. And I want to dive deep into fair trade. I got a whole bunch of questions, which is exciting for me. So tell us more specifically about your involvement with fair trade.
Right. So we started looking at fair trade in 2012. First, the fair trade standard was brand new and it had opened up to what they call the farm worker standard. And we were trying to understand how to apply it to our farms. And it was interesting because at the beginning, we could see that we were complying with a lot of the spirit of those standards. We were just not registering that or in any way, accounting for some of those positive changes. A lot of growers see the standards and they go like, I already do that. Yeah, but you don't get any credit for it, right? And you don't have any systematic way to really kind of say, look, I do this not, once in a blue moon, I do it consistently, right? So we looked at standards and we saw that it was something that was already kind of compatible to what we're doing. We had to make a ton of changes. We had to make, a lot of training to people. And the funny thing was when we presented it to our board of directors and, I don't remember the figures exactly, but we went to our board of directors and we said, like, look, we want to do this certification. And I think at the time we were talking about that the cost to the company was going to be somewhere around, $120,000 to $150,000 to retrofit, the 2 farms at the time. We were just doing Mexico and, do all this training. And the board was okay, so how does this work? So like we're like, well, you get certified, you get a standard, and then once you get certified, you're able to sell under fair trade terms, which has a premium attached to it. And they're like, okay, we understand that. And then that premium goes back to the farm worker. And they're like, all right, so how much does Wholesum get out of that premium? And we're like, well, it gets nothing. Like, why don't we just get the 150,000, give everybody bonuses and we're done, right?
But it's deeper than that, right? I mean, and we'll get into that, but I mean, it's a much deeper company culture connection than just that premium or whatever that turn, right?
Right. Yeah. So how I sold my board of directors on it, it was like, look, give me that $150,000, right? I'm going to go out to the marketplace. I'm going to sell enough fair trade produce that I'm going to bring back to the farm twice that in benefit to our employees and farm workers. So we were able to get that first year about $300,000 back to the farm. That our board of directors invested 150. We're able to get back 300,000 now. So that was kind of our first year. It was our first experience. It was awesome. At the beginning was a lot of like, hey, in the future, we're going to get this benefit. And everybody was like, yeah, man. But when that first bus, rode in, when like, it was like one of the first needs, that farm workers had identified. We need access, reliable access for our kids, especially the ones that, were taking school, like, high school, and they needed to kind of send their kids to a town that was about, a 15-minute bus ride, north. And when that bus rode in, then everybody got it. It became tangible, it became real. And farm workers in their leadership took over the program. Like they believed it, and now they're totally engaged on it.
Well, I got to tell you, I went to public high school, but my math tells me that if you started with 150 and you ended at 300, that's good.
Yeah.
So you first got certified in Mexico, and when did you get certified in Mexico?
So in 2012 we started our certification.
2012.
2013 was kind of our first year that we went live with it, right? It wasn't until 2016 that there was the opportunity to go and bring fair trade to the United States. Back then, the standard did not allow for certification in what they call the global north. And for us, it was a weird time because we were, in 2013, we started kind of collecting these premiums and started doing projects in communities of origin of farm workers, especially immigrant farm workers, right? So now we're still celebrating all these successes in Mexico. And in the United States, we're like, well, we have a farm here in Arizona, and we had kind of like a end of season, like celebration, but nothing else, right? So we felt we were on balance. So when Fairtrade USA, the organization that regulates this, announced that they wanted a pilot for the United States, we were the first to say like, hey, we're in. We want to be the guinea pigs. So in 2016. We jumped to the idea to certify the farm here in Arizona, and it became the first fair trade certified farm in the
first fair trade certified farm in the United States. Well, that's a pretty big accomplishment. That's a pretty big buy-in. I love that. Now, just taking it a little bit more full circle, just so people get a perspective on how committed you are. You have a new role. I'm assuming you do this Saturday afternoons for like an hour with your schedule. How do you do that? How are you now the chairman of Fair Trade USA? Huh?
Yeah, so I'm certainly, as you can see, kind of have drank the Kool-Aid. I see firsthand, and I believe how fair trade, can change communities. And it's like we have many certifications, organic certifications, food safety certifications, and they're all great and everything. But man, we don't celebrate any of those like we celebrate the fair trade certification, right? How much it means to our employees and to our communities where we grow produce, right? So, when I was invited to become part of the board of directors, of Fair Trade USA, the organization that writes the standards, that, does the audits. And I saw that, my understanding of this, system could go beyond agriculture. Like these guys are bringing fair trade to apparel, to home goods. I mean, you got companies like, Patagonia, J. Crew coming out with fair trade, pants that have been sewed in factories that actually use the same system to bring equity to those supply chains, right? They are starting fisheries, right? So you read about, things that happen out in the middle of the ocean with shrimp farmers being screwed, right? And all of a sudden, here's the fair trade standard coming in, and bringing a system to those that are willing to get certified to change the narrative, right? They're expanding it into dairy, right? So
Right.
all of a sudden, I had an opportunity to, bring some part of the knowledge that we've gained through this journey, that we've been on, and, share it with really passionate people in a nonprofit. So I thought that was a great fit for what I was doing.
For
And
sure.
I spend a lot of energy and time in trying to, propel the fair trade movement forward. Yes, I'm the most advocate, for fair trade produce, but, beyond produce, I also, love to see the system to bring more equity to more supply chains beyond just produce.
Well, again, it's a positive cost of food. And I think it's worthy of our time, it's worthy of our energy, and it's worthy of our efforts to understand and implement it. Because in the world today, we're all trying to do a little better than the world from yesterday, right? And I think that this
Right.
speaks to that. And I think that when you see, and I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit more about your accomplishments, but I shared a conversation with a mutual friend, James White, and he talked about you, and he's part of Fair Trade as well. And he said he banged the drum so loud for you about your passion and your heart for this. And we shared a couple laughs and we talked a little bit, but it was fun to share with him, our chance that we were going to have talking specifically about fair trade. And he just reminded me about your passion, and it fired me up. And so I can hear it in your voice, and I know everybody else can too. So let's get a little deeper. I want to get a little deeper into the fair trade conversation, because you're willing to share. And that's a fun thing I think about fair trade, is the fact that you guys are willing to share, and you're willing to talk about these accomplishments, and you're not afraid to talk about things that are struggles too. That's a part of understanding, I think, the positivity that we need to look at when it comes to cost of food. So tell us what your support of fair trade and fair trade practices have accomplished.
Right. So like I would tell you that fair trade also, it's a journey, right? You don't get there year one. You understand it more and more. Your employees and your part of your team, you really kind of understands it more and more.
Sure.
We have done great achievements. Like we measure our contributions back to the farm every year. So far we have sent back premiums to farms in the United States and in Mexico for $5.8 million.
5.8 million.
Yes, since the inception of this program, right? We think that we have touched the lives of about 2,000 farm workers.
Wow.
It would be 9 years that we've been on this journey, right? And one of the cool things about fair trade is that it also has taught me lessons in humility, to be honest with you. It is not a top-down approach to solutions. Like I don't bring, some pre-prescribed solutions to farm workers in Sonora or in Watsonville, California, right? Where we have, farms that operate under the fair trade standard, but the farm workers themselves drive the bus. And to me, it was, I'll tell you a story, of humility, right? On understanding what real empowerment is. I think it was kind of at the beginning of our journey when we, our first couple of years, we've gotten some first wins. We were really proud of that. Our sales team was energized to go try and sell, on their fair trade terms, asking all of our customers to contribute right into this. And we have done like some work on nutrition, bringing kids nutritious foods for breakfast. We had done this idea about the bus, about bringing transportation. We had even done some health initiatives. And then they told me, oh, the next big project, we're going to spend $80,000 in building a soccer field. I was like, what? We were kind of in such a trajectory, do you know how much it takes to raise $80,000? How many people we have to convince to pay us the premium to raise? And we're going to build a soccer field. I was like, at the beginning, I was like, it just didn't seem to me very necessary.
Right.
And then the general manager for the farm, a guy that has been such a fair trade champion, Francisco Landell, he told me, Ricardo, you don't really live here. don't take your values, your community, view and try to bring it here. Like, you don't live here. You don't know what it's like to live here. Just like this soccer field has become now the center of social life in town. Before the soccer field, people had very little, ways to spend their time and energy. So there was a lot of gossip in the farm and this and that. Now people are coming here, there's like 11 teams that have,
Right.
have, kids and, female league and co-eds. And this is like people come out here, root for their kids, root for their wives. They installed lights so they can play until the, late hours in the night. I learned a valuable lesson that I don't know what people need. They know better than myself. And that actually kind of changed the way I approached,
Right.
farm workers know what they need. We don't need to tell them. We just need to give them the tools for them to do it for themselves.
What an uplifting story. And I mean, and you're right. It's soccer is such a big part of the culture, and to be able to have a place, and I've seen it, right? I've seen the field that they made. It's beautiful. I mean, and it really is the focal point of what goes on. I think you've got 11 teams now going, and what it does. You're right, but that is a humbling lesson. But what a great opportunity that you've afforded that conversation to even happen because of fair trade. Right. And then you go back, and then, and I'm going to say it again, to go back and use the word $5.8 million raised to give back to help improving lives of over 2,000 people. I don't know. That's pretty damn cool. It's pretty damn cool. So tell me a little bit, I want to go beyond just the soccer park a little bit. Tell me more about some of the school projects, the educational related projects that you guys have done.
So as you can see that, the fair trade movement has become, pretty integral to the Wholesum culture too, right? We say that we also kind of have a shared responsibility with this program, right? So the typical way, a committee that is kind of like the leadership of that fair trade, farm worker community goes about is they put out, they formulate projects that come from suggestions from all farm workers. Right. They put them out to vote in a democratic way. We always get, high 80s, low 90s participation, right? People go out and vote for these initiatives. And, not all of the projects earn, funds because funds are limited, right? So only maybe top 1, top 2, depending on how big they are, earn the funding, right? And the other ones, they're just going to have to kind of wait till the next round, right? So what Wholesum has done through this idea of shared responsibility is, out of our pocket, we go and we'll say, hey, Fair Trade Committee, we see that, you wanted to get a school luncheon program going, but the funds ran out and they're no longer available. Wholesum will step in, we'll put in the funds, we will invite our, customers to come out and volunteer their time and build this, school kitchen so that you can actually do, your lunches, you can do your breakfast and provide it to students. Mm-hmm. And we will put in the infrastructure if you run it. And we've done it twice now, these type of projects for schools. And we did one for a community center, for a computer lab as well. People enjoy kind of coming down and working really hard in the sun in the middle of the desert, right? And they come away with a big appreciation, right? I mean, it's only been until the pandemic that we started realizing that farm workers are very, very important, for us to have food in our table, right? But, through these, opportunities to volunteer, we invite, our customers to come out and they come and see it from a whole different perspective.
Well, I think I wanted to lean into that because you said shared responsibility. And so for you to be able to bring the front to the consumer, the retailer, maybe the wholesaler, whoever it is that's helping push this forward to come out and actually be on the property to actually build something is pretty phenomenal. It definitely makes a very connective deal. And I think it reinforces what positive costs in food are all about. Tell me a little bit about, from an education standpoint, when I got the chance to go down and visit years back, you guys were building a computer lab for kids. I'm assuming that's up and running now, and I'm sure that's made a huge impact to the community.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story, about the guy that actually runs it. It's the dream story that I'd like to replicate many times again, right? This gentleman that runs it, his name's Misael Doram. He is the son of a farm worker, right? That works for Wholesum. This gentleman works in the maintenance department. And Misael, through the Fair Trade funds, was able to get a grant to go to school. And he ended up going to a state school in Mexico, studied systems, and decided to apply for the job of being the one that runs the computer lab in the farm. He wanted to come back and be able to kind of teach these kids about computers, help them with homework, and be part of coming back full circle, putting his time back into the community that helped him out. So to me, Misael's story is awesome because here you see a second generation that was able to get access to education thanks to fair trade, but he comes back to the farm, and as he's now instructing a whole generation of farm kids on, how to get better skills, how to really, be able to do research online, how to do their, homework, on computers, how to use Word, how to use Excel, right? And he's now teaching these kids, and he's kind of bringing back. So, I mean, to me, that is the dream of fair trade.
Wow, and I love that, and it reminds me of something that I've heard you say before, and I think it's just wonderful. Is generosity sparks more generosity. And that's a very powerful statement, and sharing that. Give us some more, give us a little bit, kind of how you've changed, if you can, a few more stories or some ideas so people can understand that, really the impact of what you were doing. How have you changed some lives and families and individuals with this program specifically?
Yeah, let me build on this story about generosity sparks more generosity, right? People that are being shown generosity, they're generous themselves. And maybe this is a concept that we don't see a lot of examples in everyday life, but when you have a fair trade product, our farm workers understand that for every box that we label as fair trade that goes out of the farm, there's a benefit coming back to their community. They take care of that product, they take care of those orders, they know exactly who that is going to, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it was in 2018, we had a hurricane that hit southern Mexico really hard. Our farms are in northern Mexico. We didn't even get rain, but there were some hurricanes that came to southern Mexico and hit them really hard, and those communities were really affected, right? Some of our farm workers have roots in southern Mexico and central Mexico, so they were like, "What do we do? Like, we want to do something to help." At the beginning, just at the farm, really kind of organically, they started kind of like, should we start like a collection and let's, pitch in and, and then try to contribute back to the Red Cross. And somebody said, hey, could we use our fair trade funds to donate to the Mexican Red Cross for hurricane relief?
Right.
Our admin was like, we don't know. Let us call, the standard people. They said, yes, you just kind of have to do the same process. It's got to be democratically, elected. And one of the choices has to be donate nothing, right? So they put it out to vote. Hey, we want to, donate to hurricane relief, give up the fair trade funds that we've collected, and, give them to the to the Red Cross. The choices are give nothing, give amount to it was like 10,000, or give, something like 30,000, right? Wow. 30,000 won by 90 some percent. People voted to give to the Red Cross. We just gave it to the Red Cross. We don't know exactly who benefit, but it was something that our community, was hungry to do. So it was like, here's people that are being shown generosity and they're willing to give up the funds that they collected so far that year, for hurricane relief, for other people that were suffering too. So what an amazing story of people showing generosity.
Well, it is. And I think it goes back to the whole concept. I think it goes back to your leadership and what your family's decided to do, right? You could have taken a different path, right? And you didn't. And you've stuck to this path, and you've been doing this for a long time now. And you're starting to see how much impact that has. And I think it's phenomenal. And I know that you've got workers now that are homeowners. You've got, I mean, the empowerment that you're doing, the uplifting that you're doing isn't just all about what you're putting out, each day in a box. It goes, again, it's so much deeper. So from home ownership, kids going to school and graduating, getting those, those opportunities that they may not necessarily have is extremely, extremely commendable, to say the least.
And we want to, like, we got here just by trying to do, the next stop, the next step in that responsibility chain, right? We just, it's been now many years, but we got here also in a journey, like one step at a time. We're just trying to like understand this kind of role of that we have and go the next step, right? So for us, it's been extremely rewarding, and we want to think about Wholesum as a vehicle, for personal development, professional development, spiritual development. We want to have people kind of join Wholesum and be a vehicle, through you providing great produce grown with great passion, but provide an opportunity for everybody that jumps in.
Well, I think what the beauty about fair trade too, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the buy-in, I mean, you've got the people all throughout your supply chain inside your company have a buy-in to that end process. There's a level of caring that goes in to every shift, every employee, that's probably not like a lot of other companies. And I think that's the really cool thing about fair trade, is that your actions uplift and inspire everybody involved. And that means the little kid whose mom's going out working or dad's working, and that kid says, I'm watching my folks do their thing. I've got this opportunity. I can go to the computer lab. I could go, I know I have an opportunity to go to college. I have an opportunity to do whatever I want to be able to do with my life because of that system. And I think it's so cool. I don't know why more people don't embrace it. I don't know why more people don't run to it and really lean into the fact that it is a true positive cost of food, and it's well worth doing. Do you have any other stories you can share? Because it's just fascinating to me, just the way you've connected to so many people. You got to have some good ones out there that I think are probably worthy of our time and energy to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, there's many stories. I mean, we also want to kind of have taken this movement to, all the partners that we work with. I mean, we have our, 3 farms, but we also work with, other farmers around Mexico, around the United States now too. And, we've certified farms, in California and Arizona, but also, in central Mexico, right? And one of these farms, this gentleman called Daniel Gutierrez, I mean, he has a story that, prior to working for, one of our pepper farms there in central Mexico, he worked for a steel mill, and, due to an unfortunate accident, he had a hearing loss that was pretty severe, went undiagnosed at the beginning. And, he had a really hard time communicating, as you probably, can guess, right? At this farm, the owners had embraced, the fair trade movement. They had certified their farms, and we have been selling and proud to be representing them in the market, and selling Wholesum fair trade peppers for them. So they decided to, do a health clinic in this farm, where they actually diagnosed Daniel of this, problem that he was communicating and had to do with loss of hearing. So, through the Fair Trade Committee, he was able to get hearing aids. So now this person, all of a sudden, his life went from, a very kind of confusing atmosphere, trying to figure it out, to somebody that, just he's just jumps with energy, jumps with joy. This person can communicate clearly. And, obviously, this is something that kind of came to it, through the efforts of, an equity supply chain, right?
Generosity sparks more generosity.
Absolutely.
I think you got to get that on a t-shirt. I'm just saying. I'm just telling you, you better hurry up before somebody puts a little R by that. So tell me, I want to shift gears a little bit and kind of talk little bit more about the business and what you're up to and what you guys are doing. Tell me a little bit about your Grown for Good campaign and why it's important.
Yeah, I mean, we started kind of, looking for something that communicated what we were kind of about, and we were like, grown for good. We want to grow, good food that is, really, healthy and tasty, right? We want to grow it in the right way. We want to grow it, good for the consumer. We want to grow it good for the people in the communities that produce it, right?
Right.
We want to kind of, connect the yin with the yang. We really kind of want to do the responsible choice here. So when we're saying, grown for good is, good health, good flavor, and good livelihood.
I love that. I love that. I mean, that certainly encompasses who you guys are. There's no doubt about that. But now, you've made some really significant changes in your packaging stuff, which I'd like to just touch on briefly, because I think it's worthy of the conversation. So packaging changes for you are now fitting into that Grown for Good kind of campaign and that mantra about, doing things a little different and a good livelihood. Can you share a little bit about some of your changes there? Because I think they're really cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, like was that responsibility chain, that journey doesn't stop, right? Like at the produce. So now you start looking at your packaging, right? So how do we, become more responsible in our packaging? And it's hard. Packaging has to communicate. It has to provide convenience. Right. It has to protect the product. It does a lot of jobs, and it has to come out, at a cost that is reasonable for the farmer to be able to afford, right? So, packaging has to do many jobs at the same time. So, we started looking at first, our recyclable content in our packaging. We started looking at ways to reduce plastic. We come out with some ideas where we can have packaging that is 100% compostable too, right? And, we go out to the marketplace and try to offer, these solutions. We really kind of have started looking at everything that comes in, all the inputs that come into growing and producing, fresh, organic, vegetables. Mm-hmm. And, when you start looking at how much packaging is of everything that we buy. So we put everything in and we measured, so all of our inputs from seeds to fertilizer to growing media, right? And how many tons of packaging we have. And packaging became the biggest category in terms of tons that we purchase every year. I didn't know that.
Right.
Years ago, I didn't know that. So, obviously we saw an opportunity there to increase our responsibility. I thought something like fertilizer was going to come out. It looks really menacing there in the warehouse. There's these sacks on top of them. Whereas boxes and clamshells, they come and go. Like, I don't see them. But once you start measuring, packaging became the biggest category of everything we purchase. So we're trying to measure all of our inputs and understand if they are renewable or non-renewable source. So right now we are about 62% of all of our inputs in metric tons that come from renewable sources. We got to work on the other 38. And, you could tell that, there's some plastic in there that, we gotta find alternatives for.
Well, you do. Yes, the other 38. But I think what's more important is I hope the people that haven't got to 1 or 2 or 3 take a moment of pause and ask themselves where they are in this packaging deal, because plastics packaging, is a really big problem. And I don't think people realize that inside of our bodies, there's equivalent of about a credit card worth of plastic floating around in our systems. It's pretty gross. But, it's funny when you think about packaging and organics. I can remember back before gray hair, when we were trying to launch this thing forward and getting out there, how we were just beat down into putting everything in a package. And we kept arguing back. It's like, we should be the one sector that doesn't have packaging. Make everybody else go to packaging. Keep us out of it. And unfortunately, that didn't work.
Yeah.
I tried, but it didn't work. It didn't work.
No, the ring of the register is pretty powerful, right? Like not missing the ring of the register became pretty powerful. I'm hopeful now that with, some of the G10 technology that they can do, bulk produce, and they can scan it in, and we could, not have to put everything in a bag or clamshell, just so that retailers can not miss the ring. So yeah, for sure, that has been something in our industry that kind of pushes and pulls us, and it kind of comes in circles too, right? You know, people realize that, you know, that idea has merit, you know, when you don't miss the ring, but people also realize that consumers are not used to buying everything in packs.
But, you know, but you sharing your story about what you're doing to mitigate that, to change, is super important. I mean, your story, you know, whether you have, you know, 38% or 42%, whatever the number is, your story raises the bar on everybody else. Right. And I think it's important that we keep these conversations going, because we all have to make a change. We can't, you know, we all have to change, not one person, right? It has to start with one to get to two, to go to three, but we got to get everybody on board if we really want to get the ball down the field. And I think that's what's super, super important. So let me ask you another quickie question, and you can decline to answer this one if you want. What's going on that's new and active out there, and some varieties and some flavor stuff? You guys play your hand a little bit. You're going to tell me to move on to the next question.
I kind of want to tell you to move on to the next.
All right, that's fine. I knew that was coming.
But let me tell you what I can share. I mean, you know, some of the exciting stuff is you know, really kind of like a little boring, but increasing yields is still so important. I mean, in a time when we're being like, you know, wood pallets are scarce, and you know, they're becoming more expensive. Transportation is, you know, hitting us really hard. I mean, the economics of agriculture haven't changed. You know, the prices of produce rarely, you know, moves with inflation, right? So as growers, we're always under the gun to start in higher yields every year. If not, we're going to get left behind, right? If we're not finding ways to increase our yields, become more effective, and squeeze more production out of every meter square, you know, inflation is going to get us. We can't raise our prices any further. Like, there's, you know, it's not like cars that, you know, back in the 70s were, you know, $4,000, and now you pay $20,000 for a car. You know, prices of tomatoes are pretty much, you know, anywhere from $199 to $399, and they're not going anywhere, right? Right.
So I want to jump into that. You set me up for my next question. Thank you, which is, I want to talk a little bit about ag technology, because it's a big conversation right now, but especially in the organic field, there's a lot of ebb and flow. There's a lot of yelling and not a lot of talking in certain cases. I come from the perspective that I think ag technology is important. I think some of the things that are coming out are great, especially when you talk about ways to save water, which is a tremendous problem that we need to address. And here in California, worst drought in 125 years, guys letting trees go that are dying. So ag technology to me is a very worthy conversation. I come from perspective, and agree with me or not, is that it's an, you know, so many people have it as an and or conversation, right? And I'm more of the and side, like, you know, technology and dirt farming, technology and farming, they've got to come together for the betterment of the planet overall, and all these billions of people that are coming. So share with me, if you can, a little bit about the positivity of ag technology for you, what it's done, some of the things you have measured that you know that you're doing. I know we touched on it earlier about energy and stuff, but I'm just curious really specifically about water, because I think that's a really valid conversation.
Right. So, I mean, in our company culture, you know, problem solving is something that I told you from the beginning. Like, this is who we are. We're here to solve problems. We expect things to be hard.
Sure.
Right? So yes, technology provides those solutions. We want to, you know, have technology that works in conjunction with organic growing and organic growing philosophy. We want technology that helps that, you know, organic philosophy, you know, shine even brighter, right? And, you know, we also understand that we're on a planet that, you know, has scarce resources, you know, so yeah, I mean, we grow here in Arizona, and it's certainly, you know, something that water is a, you know, certainly a precious resource in the desert, right? So how are we going to be good stewards? How are we going to show that responsibility to our community, right? And, you know, through real different technologies, what we've been able to do is, you know, grow in a way where we can capture our drain water and bring it back, clean it, and put it back into the system again. And when you do that, you're able to become way more efficient with the water. You know, when you irrigate the plant, about 30% of the water you put in kind of, you know, drains away. And, you know, that water also has, you know, nutrients. So you don't want to let it go, right? It's got value in it. So by you collecting it back again, you're getting water that already has nutrients. You don't have to start at zero, and you put it back in there. So what we've been able to do, I'll give you an example. If you read the literature, if you farm, in a traditional, field of tomatoes, you use about 24 gallons to produce 1 pound of tomatoes. In a greenhouse technology with recirculation, you can lower that to 5 gallons for a pound. So, you could do the math, it's a pretty big savings, 19 gallons of water less to produce the same pound of tomatoes. So that's a type of, efficiency that we need to kind of really show responsibility in areas where water is a pretty damn, scarce resource.
It's a hugely scarce resource, and it's only going to get worse. And I think that you're going to start to see that as the summer progresses. I just looked at the 10-day forecast for the valley, and they're going to be 111, 113 degrees coming up. Woo! Stuff needs water at 113, right?
I'm in Arizona, and I say that's hot.
That's hot, baby. But I think something important to recognize in this whole debate and in this conversation about ag technology, and doesn't get enough, I think, street cred, is let's not forget it is all about the food, right? I think our first priority is to get food, good, clean, healthy food on people's tables, and that using technology helps us get good, clean, organic food on people's table, and you just saved 19 gallons of water. I find it hard not to have that conversation and find a way to get the or out of the conversation and put the and in the conversation. My soapbox for the day.
No, and I think what we are trying to do is we are farmers first. These are all tools, right? At the end of the day, you can have a fancy computer system, but somebody, a grower needs to tell the computer system when to start irrigation cycles, how long they should be, if we're venting, what is the set point for humidity? What is the set point for temperature? Like at the end of the day, having that connection to the plant to try to optimize the environment for the plants is still what we're trying to do, right? These are all kind of good and shiny toys, but it's still all about growing. It's still all about the fruit. It's still all about putting a great tasting product in front of you, when you buy it at the supermarket, and something that is, clean, something that is grown with great care, and something that has, freshness and quality into it. Yes, you never get away from that.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for summing that up. I appreciate it. I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you a couple other kind of different questions. And one of which is you shared something with me in our conversations prepping for this and talking a little bit, and share the quote with me that you learned, that you put into practice, because I think it's just great.
So, it's a story that my dad told me. He says, agriculture is really easy. You just have to read a 100-page book and you're done. And I'm like, oh, man, that doesn't seem so hard. He's like, yeah, you just get to do one every year, right? He's been at it for 65 years, so I only been at it for 20 some years, so I still got a lot to learn. I mean, I think that that's why we are so oriented in our company to be problem solvers, because agriculture is going to throw you things. It's humidity. You have too much or you have too little. You have new diseases. I mean, in the tomato industry,
Sure.
some years ago, we were dealing, with bacteria. Now we're dealing with, some new viruses, that are attacking. I mean, the brown rugose virus is a big problem in the tomato industry. Everywhere
Sure it is.
It's a big problem, right? So we're going to have, problems. We're going to have different, challenges, and every year proves to be one different. You think you got it all figured out, something comes from left field. That's why we say we got to be problem solvers. We expect
absolutely. Well, I think it's fair to say in organic farming, if you see you have a problem, you're a day too late, right? So you've got to be proactive. There's no two ways about it. You've got to be proactive. I got to tell you, and I'm going to soapbox for a second here. you're a really inspirational person. I have to tell you that being around you is a great use of time and energy. You know, your personality, it oozes out of you, that enthusiasm. It's very infectious. I look at what you guys have done, you know, and you have your heart on your sleeve. Your heart is in the front of your business. Your family's heart is in the front of your business. And as a farmer, you wake up every day and automatically, and all farmers are the same. They wake up every day and they automatically start taking risk as soon as they put their boots on in the morning. Every day is full of risk. And then you guys took it another level by adding fair trade. You guys went to a deeper connection to the people that you work with and to the food and to your end customers. And I think it's inspirational, man. And I just wanted to say thank you for that, because, you know, there's just not enough of you out there. And I'm glad that we've got a platform. We've got this opportunity to share a little bit and talk about that. But I wanted to share that, you know, you inspire me. If I was to pick people on my list of people that are inspirational, you're on my list. So with that being said, I want to ask you, who inspired you?
Yeah, you know, and thank you for those, you know, kind words. I mean, I tell you what, I mean, in our, you know, family business and our, you know, family farm, you know, our kind of social justice inspiration really kind of comes from my mother. You know, she's the one that kind of has that spirit, you know, that you want to kind of do things not just for yourself, but you got to kind of lift up everyone around you. You know, you know, remember in the 80s growing up in Mexico, you know, my mom taking me to political rallies. You know, Mexico had one party system, or one party that won the elections for 70 years straight. And, you know, here she is, you know, kind of a housewife, you know, going out to political rallies and taking her kids with us, right? You know, I saw how passionate my mom was, and she saw injustice and really just could not take it, right? And I think, you know, we learned it from her. And you know, we got it from her. I think that the bug of social justice, you know, comes from my mother. You know, she is, you know, still, you know, really passionate about politics. You know, she lives in Mexico. There was just an election here last, Sunday. Of course, she was out there campaigning. Of course, she was out there being loud, right? Because, you know, she really has that passion for it. And I think that's where we got it from.
I would say that it sounds like it. It sounds like it. And you know what? Thank you for tell your mom on behalf of everybody that's listening and a part of this. Tell her thanks from us, right? Because you're raising the bar, and I love that. So I'm going to shift gears. Let's have a little bit of fun. All right. I'm going to put you in the hot seat. I'm going to fire you off some questions, quick answers. Are you ready? All righty. Who's your favorite superhero?
Oh, you know, I'm a Batman guy for sure.
Nothing wrong with that. That's good. I like that one. All right. Give me something that's on your bucket list.
Oh, I mean, I want to go to Egypt. I really want to see the pyramids at Giza. I want to go to, you know, the Valley of the Kings. I had that on my bucket list for a long time. You know, that really intrigues me. I'm kind of a little bit of a history nerd, and that's one part of history I've never gotten to. That's like the, you know, before the Common Era stuff. I mean, really would love to see that. I think that's, you know, something special. I'd like to kind of get there one day. Yeah.
That would be cool. I'll go with you. That would be very cool. What's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
You know, the weirdest thing I ever eaten is, you know, one time I was traveling in Oaxaca. At the time I was, you know, working with some organic mango growers there and it was kind of like Oaxaca, kind of almost close to the Guatemalan
Right.
border there. So the gentleman that you know, we were kind of, you know, growing mangoes with and packing mangoes with invited me to go, you know, to have lunch with him and his family. And, you know, they actually fish these kind of bass that are local to the area. And just like caviar, that they take the sack with all the eggs and they actually fry those eggs and they serve it with a kind of milky, you know, buttery sauce with tortillas. It was crunchy. It was silky. It was delicious. I've never had it again. I only had it that one time.
Okay, somehow the "I never had it again" comment is kind of knocking the delicious part out. I'm just saying. I'm not saying. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading into it. Maybe I'm reading into it. If you could trade lives with somebody for one day, who would it be and why?
I would say I would love to kind of, maybe trade lives with one of the apostles, especially somebody that is, less known, like Bartholomew or something like that. I would have loved to be, front row seat to that adventure through, Galilee, through, Jerusalem, Samaria. I would have loved to been part of that and have a front row seat to the life of Jesus. I would think that that would be what I would have loved to see.
That would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. All right, final trivia question for you. I forgot to tell you, you're playing for cash and prizes. I didn't know if you knew that or not.
I'm going for the big one then.
Yeah, well, there's no cash and prize, so that's good. I'm glad you're reaching for the top. Okay, last question. Who would you rather have a drink with? Frank Sinatra or Snoop Dogg?
Oh, I'm more of a Frank Sinatra guy. I mean, I love the Rat Pack. I mean, even my daughter, who's 15 years old, knows who Frank Sinatra is. She plays the songs. We dance to them. So I'm kind of on the old school on this one. I guess it's kind of showing my age too. I'm between both of those generations. I never quite really made it to hip hop. I'm more of an 80s guy, right? I'm more of a, Metallica, Motley Crue guy. I never really kind of made it to the hip hop scene.
It's all right. Hey, you got to love the chairman of the board, right? Frank Sinatra is one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my life is Frank Sinatra. He is amazing. He was amazing. So I've got one final question that I want to throw at you really quick. And before I do, I want to thank you again for you and your family and your leadership, your inspiration, and raising the bar, setting a standard out there for people to achieve and work towards. It's worthy, man. On those days when you're wondering, just let you know it's worthy and it's worth what you're doing. And I appreciate it. And you got some damn good food out there. And I know that my wife's a big fan of the poppies. So I know that's one I pick up every time I'm in the store these days. And I appreciate buying those for what you're doing for other people and how that I can vote with my dollars and make changes with my dollars that don't have anything to do with my neighborhood, but have something to do with uplifting the food conversation. I think that's so worthy. So I want to ask you one final question. If you could tell folks just one thing about Wholesum, what would you tell them?
Well, what a hard question to answer. I would say, that, Wholesum is in the journey, right? Through responsibility. We'll never get there, but we're going to keep trying.
It's a hell of a good answer, my brother. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your energy and hanging out with me a little bit and joining us. I know you can't hear it. I can hear it in my headphones. There's literally, now that the UFOs are here, the whole galaxy's clapping right now for you. Ladies and gentlemen, a big shout out to Ricardo Crisantes and the Wholesum family for what they're doing and what they got going on. My brother, I appreciate your time. I'm so happy you hung out with me. Let's go do it again. You got an open invitation. Come on, we'll get more. I'm going to get more into the details about these new varieties. I'll get it out of you. I know I will.
Hey, thank you, Todd. This has been a blast to kind of hang out with you and, talk produce, talk fair trade. These are things that I'm passionate about. So it's an easy conversation. Thank you, man. Thank you for, lifting up the voices of all these companies. Thank you, man.
My pleasure, brother. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with us. We'll chat soon. Take care. Wow, that was awesome. A huge shout out to Ricardo for hanging out with us a little bit, informing us, enlightening us about what they do, and talking about the subject I love to talk about, driving positive cost in food. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us. Don't forget, the video portion of this is available on our YouTube channel, as well as TLC.organic. The audio stuff is available on all the podcasting sites, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, it's on some ones I've never even heard of before, but we're out there. Also look for us on LinkedIn. Once again, we're really excited that you're with us. We've got some great guests coming up, some great conversations, and we appreciate your time. So thanks again. We appreciate it. And don't forget to go inspire somebody today. Take care.